In this video, we'd like to answer the question, why did I choose mechanical engineering? Basically, the short answer is the following. It was a compromise. And let me try to explain more in detail why I think it was a compromise. Well, during high school, I was really fascinated by mathematics and physics and also engineering, some engineering subjects. But at the same time, I saw some kind of real life examples at school and like experiments in the lab that also made me interested in engineering. I was of course more fascinated by physics and mathematics, and if you followed the channel for a few months, I think you have realized that. But never mind that, I liked engineering, even if the passion for engineering was definitely less intense than for mathematics and physics. At the same time, my father was an engineer. Unfortunately, he passed away some years ago, but never mind, he was an engineer, and he was a civil engineer, not a mechanical engineer. I was also kind of influenced by him because he used to say that a lot of jobs were available at the time for mechanical engineers, especially. There was a lot of demand, and that definitely influenced my choices, as well as my mother. My mother was influenced by my father, and of course she would say the same thing as my father. So that was another point that I needed to highlight. My family. So I think that most people can relate to this because maybe their families want a certain path for their children, for their sons, daughters. And this is not always something positive because sometimes, and it is usually the case, it was the case for me, a person develops his or her own interests. And these interests might be different from what parents desire for their children. This is something that parents do not always realize. On the other hand, the Mechanical Engineering University here in Italy was in Forlì, and it is still the University of Bologna, so it is near Bologna, but it is another branch located in Forlì. The University of Bologna has several branches. Some of them are in Forlì, some of them are in Cesena, another city somewhere between Rimini, where I live, and Bologna. So it's in a region called Emilia-Romagna. The University of Bologna has several branches. Other branches are in Ravenna, for example. They are still in the same region, but let's say they are within a radius of 100 kilometers from Bologna. So they are kind of spread out. This definitely helped those people who could not relocate to Bologna for their studies. And my family could not really afford to send me to Bologna because the expenses would have been too high. So the only choice for me would have been to commute from Rimini to another city, and it was difficult to commute from Rimini to Bologna because the distance is quite too much for a person to commute. Well, actually I've known of people who have done that, but it's very difficult, it's very stressful, and it was stressful for me to commute from Rimini to Forlì. So just try to guess from Rimini to Bologna, which is twice the distance from Rimini to Forlì. From Rimini to Forlì we have about 55 kilometers, 60 kilometers, and from Rimini to Bologna you have 120. So to travel back and forth you would have to commute for 240 kilometers, so 120 times 2. Another factor to keep into consideration for me was the distance from my city to the university. And another choice could have been that to study in Cesena. Cesena is closer to Rimini, but in Cesena there was no university related to mechanical engineering. Yes, there is another university related to electronic engineering and also engineering of telecommunications, also biomedical engineering and computer science engineering. I thought that mechanical engineering was more akin to my interests, also because I had already downloaded some slides from the university related to some subjects that I would have later studied in the mechanical engineering courses, and I liked what I saw on those slides, which were related to mechanics of machines, for example. They dealt with a lot of mathematics, which I really loved, as you probably know, and then I went for the mechanical engineering route. So that was my choice. The first year of mechanical engineering lived up to my expectations because there was a lot of mathematics, a lot of physics, so a lot of abstract subjects that I really loved. Algebra, also rational mechanics. and other subjects like chemistry, programming, MATLAB, I felt like a kid on a roller coaster. And you know that kids have fun riding a roller coaster, right? So I used to have a lot of fun. Then in my second year of the Bachelor of Science program, I had a little less fun because it was more difficult for me. I had to deal with technical drawing, 2D and 3D drawing, especially 3D drawing. And I used a program called SolidWorks. And I realized that mechanical drawing is really important for a mechanical engineer in order for him, for example, to design a machine. This is really recurrent, some kind of required skill for a mechanical engineer. And this is quite a strong requirement for a mechanical engineer, especially here in Italy. A lot of industries require engineers, mechanical engineers, to be able to draw. Nowadays it is more related to 3D drawing on a computer. Some decades ago it was more related to how you were able to draw on paper. And this is something that I like less, because I don't like to stay on the computer all day, drawing at least. My job still involves doing that, so I still need to be on the computer every day, but I don't do mechanical drawing. That is something very useful for mechanical engineers, but it is not what I like the most. Then other subjects were more practical during the second year and the third year of my bachelor degree. I learned about a lot of industrial processes that you can use in order to work, for example, metals or other alloys. Then I had to study how to design plants, for example, mechanical plants, industrial plants, how to work with fluids under pressure, for example. And I had less of an inclination to those kind of subjects. I was not as interested, but at the same time, these were very important subjects for an engineer to develop. I would say even more important than what you could learn in the first year, where you have to study more abstract subjects. But in reality, you do not use those kind of subjects in real life. And I think that many people can relate to this. Unless you work for a university, here in Italy, your job requires way less skills than those you learn at a university. That's the reality, and it relates to my experience so far.